We'd like to do some hypnosis now, shouldn't we? Who recognizes the process that we essentially went through just now? Yeah, a few people? If I say the My Friend John technique, would that be relatively familiar with you guys? Right? My Friend John.
Oh, your friend John.
Yeah, in this case, it's actually the advanced version. It's called My Friend Russ. If I catch you using My Friend Russ, then you're in trouble, because that's just like only for Meta Master, Uber Chief hypnotists, right? Just forget that. TM. In fact, I like that. Right? I said it first. So the My Friend John or Russ technique in this case is very simple. What we're doing now is we're beginning to introduce vehicles through which we can express ourselves hypnotically. Make sense? Because in a social context, we can't suddenly break frame and go, okay, now I'm going to do stuff which is really weird and crazy, but you're not going to notice because it's kind of weird and crazy. However, there are certain socially acceptable vehicles or things that exist in normal interactions or conversations which we can borrow and transform into hypnotic vehicles, right? One of them is the anecdote. An anecdote is when you tell a story about someone else. You see how that works, right? And My Friend John or My Friend Russ, TM. Say again? No, the TM is mine. You better not use it, Buster. No. So, the My Friend John technique is essentially, I'm telling an anecdote. I'm telling a story about a friend of mine. Now, the experience my friend has, or the experience my friend puts me through, in order for you to understand the experience, you have to follow along with it. Does that make sense? So you can redo most things. I mean, the classic way that the My Friend John technique is used is like, well, I had a friend called John, and he went into hypnosis. And at first, he breathed more easily, and then this happened, and then... It's a great induction, right? It's a fantastic induction. It'll work in most social settings as well. It'll work great in like therapeutic settings and so on. The only problem I have is you're actually overtly mentioning hypnosis, hence it might trigger a train of associations, especially if people know that you've been to a covert hypnosis seminar. Don't listen, don't look, right? And as soon as you trigger the associations, then they'll think, is he up to something? The answer, of course, is yes, he is, but you don't want them to know that, right? So what I'd like you guys to do is to do essentially the My Friend John technique only. We're going to go back to what we just did a moment ago, and we're going to start introducing our main patterns in the form of an anecdote, in the form of the experience someone else had. Did you guys notice a revivification occurring in that induction? Oh, yeah. Yes? Did you guys notice a little bit of pacing and leading in terms of experiences that are normal, everyday experiences, and experiences that are a little different? Yes? Did anyone here notice utilization? In other words, when the reaction was occurring, that started being fed back in. In other words, when the room started getting calmer, when a lot of you guys had your eyes already closed because you kind of like enjoy it. Some of you had just your eyes glazed and looking forward in a more trancey state. Then we started using that and talking about calm experiences and focused experiences and all those sort of things, right? So we're using the experiences as we see them. With a group, it's a little harder to get feedback because there's a lot of you. So I have to wait until bigger shifts occur overall. And did you, of course, spot the classic one, the conscious and unconscious dissociation, as really the main theme running through all of that? Would that be fair to say? So you can do all these things, or you can do just some of them. It's really up to you. What I can do now is find a partner and spend maybe 5 minutes apiece, 7 minutes apiece, talking to them about a friend of yours and about an experience that you can weave these things into. Now, you can do this one of two ways. The first way you can do it is you can just make something up. You can make up your friend John. John apparently knows a lot of people and has some really freaky experiences given how many stories have been told about him. So you can actually do that. It's a lot easier. It's nice little practice wheels and so on. However, I would recommend that if you can think of someone, that you use an actual person that you know. That you use a real person you know, an actual experience that person has had. You just accentuate the hypnotic qualities of it. Does that make sense? Go ahead.
Can you be involved in the experience?
So the question is, can you be involved in the experience as well? Absolutely. I was involved in the experience in terms of what I was talking to you guys about. So sure. In fact, your friend John might as well just be your friend me, right? It works just as well. The beauty of saying having someone else's experience is if that person is not present, then for some reason, have you ever noticed that when an author is dead, his books become better, right? When a musician has died, and especially in a violent car crash or in a drug-fueled binge, his music somehow gets better, right? I'm not quite sure what it is. I guess it's as soon as that person gets more removed from daily life, their status in our minds lift up. We look for the better qualities of them. They no longer have to be normal human beings. Hence, and I'll come to you in a second, hence my friend John talks about another person who can now be flawless, or you don't have to treat them as a real human being. Does that kind of make sense in terms of that? And you can absolutely be included in that anecdote and be part of that interaction, so that, he said this to me and I felt this way, and then he said, no, but I feel this when I do these things. So you can have that interplay, absolutely. Does that make sense?
So it could be a time logically when you hypnotize someone else, or you went through a translation.
Sure. So the question is, could this be a time when you hypnotize someone else and put them through the trance and so on? Absolutely. Absolutely, and that's the classic way that my friend John technique is being used. For the purpose of the exercise, though, I'd like to get more conversational, more covert, so I'd like you to avoid the concept of hypnosis, if I may, right? So if you avoid the concept of hypnosis, it doesn't trigger a set of associations that makes people think, is this person possibly hypnotizing me right now? You see where I'm going with this? Now, does that make talking about hypnosis a bad thing? Heck no, right? Especially when people hear a hypnotist, well, what's hypnosis about? Well, let me tell you about my friend John. When he goes into a trance, he feels it this way. And then you absolutely do your induction that way too. So it's just giving you more flexibility in terms of when and where you use it. Does that make sense to you guys? Now, going back to the idea of why I'd like you to think of a real person to the extent that you can, first of all, your nonverbal signals will become more natural because you're thinking of a real person, so it's easier to describe them, their mannerisms and so on, right? Second of all, the story begins to flow a bit more because you know it already. You know what's already happened to that person. You're just accentuating the hypnotic qualities of that. You're just taking a little bit of artistic license, shall we say, right? And that's actually very important because it brings experience a little bit more to life for you and for the other person too. Thirdly, you can add details easily that trigger the person into accepting that as a normal anecdote, so that they're not over-analyzing it, so they fall into anecdote listening mode, and hence opens up the whole let's fall into trance thing. Do you remember some of the details I told you about Russ? Right? And they're true, by the way. He's a Canadian, he's a shaman, does a lot of meditating. He now lives in Peru, has a school there, and we talked about things. Doesn't that make him more real than if I say, I have a friend called Russ, and he goes into meditations this way? Do you see there's a fundamentally different setup there? Does that make sense to you guys? The final reason, and possibly the most important, why I would encourage you to use a real person rather than a made-up one, is because if they ever find out what the actual story was, you don't lose trust. If you make up a story, and at some point they go, hang on a second, he was never there, he never did that, there's a lot of trust issues involved there. And if they lose trust with you, especially if it's in a conversational setting, then honestly, it's very difficult to get trust back afterwards. So my preference is to stick to things that are real, absolutely happen, true anecdotes, accentuate the hypnotic qualities of it. So if people find, if people ever should come across Russ and say, hey, are you Russ? Are you the one that Igor talked about? Well, he said that you did this. And he goes, yeah, I guess I did. Versus like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. Igor? Who's Igor? Huh? Right? Can you see what I mean in terms of the trust issue that it might evoke? In some context, it's less of importance because people might expect it. For example, in a seminar, you don't necessarily expect every story to be true, although my preference is that when I tell a story that isn't absolutely true, I'll make it very obvious that it isn't, right? Like on the first day, remember the invisible Kung Fu master? You realize that was not something that actually happened to me. I did not move to Beijing, right? You realize that, right? No. Have I lost trust now? But here, I'll come to you in a second with me. But this is very important, right? if I had pretended that it's happened to me, and at some point you go, oh shit, right? I lose a lot of trust. If I lose a lot of trust, then it kicks in your critical factor, because now you've popped out of the story reality and you're trying to destroy the story because it's been, some part of you has, your integrity has been violated, shall we put it that way. Does that make sense to you guys? So you can move out of rapport, and a lot of things are happening at that point. Now, it won't always happen this way and so on. I'm just giving you my preferences and the reasons why I do it this way. You have to choose what's appropriate for you in the context that you want to do it in. So do you want to make up stories? Do you want to use my friend John? Both will work. I'm just laying out to you my reasons for choosing one over the other. Does that make sense? Let me come over here first, and I'll come back to you in a second. Do you want to come up here and just... Whoop, here we go. You may as well come up as well and then join him afterwards.
What about borrowing the story? Like, my friend Igor told me about his friend Russ.
Absolutely. That's a great... In fact, I do that all the time.
Okay.
Right? In fact, you're welcome to it. You can...
I just worried about the TM thing.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry about that. It's just about a license fee. You have to pay me each time, right? Did you have a follow-up as well? So the question is, what do you want to achieve with this exercise? Right now, it's building a skill still, right? We're still on the skill building stage. Up until maybe later on today or tomorrow, all we're interested in is, can you put people into trances and maybe do some pleasant experiences with them conversationally, so they don't realize what's happened. It just feels like they had a really good conversation with you. In terms of using it practically, we'll need to have things that we do within those conversational trances to be influential, persuasive, helpful, and so on. Does that make sense? We'll come on to those. We can't do them all at once, otherwise we'll overload. So we're building a foundation, the skill set that lets you put people in trances, and then you can start doing things with it. Make sense? Is that on? Let me just put it on for you. It is now.
Okay, hi. My question was, what if, I'm not sure, I guess this kind of goes more like maybe back to a story, but what if it's like remembering like a movie or a character in a movie that even they may have seen before, but you're talking about an experience that that character had?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay?
Everything works, right?
Okay.
It's just a question of how you present it. And in fact, we'll come on to more things like that even as we go through. These are just variation of themes. We're just starting a whole concept of how to create hypnotic vehicles right now. My friend John is the classic one. It's the simplest one to start with. And as you get used to that, we'll start evolving that into more interesting and unusual vehicles, just put it that way. Everyone clear on that? Everyone understand the exercise? So just take about 5, 6, 7 minutes apiece. Put someone through a nice, pleasant trance. If you happen to use something like, I don't know, the inner smile within it, I mean, it's not going to harm you, is it? So whilst you have them in trance, you may as well give them a little gift. The inner smile is the one we've been focusing on, so you know how to revivify an inner smile, right? Maybe we'll throw that in there as well somehow. So everyone understand the exercise? Off you go.